That classic, refreshing beverage that has been a staple in our lives for over a century. From its humble beginnings in the late 19th century to becoming a global phenomenon, Coca-Cola has managed to carve out a special place in our hearts and our refrigerators. The one with the iconic polar bears and catchy jingles that get stuck in your head for days. Remember those heartwarming holiday commercials? They make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, don't they? It's practically an American symbol, right? A symbol of joy, togetherness, and the simple pleasures of life. But what if I told you that behind this symbol of happiness lies a story that's not so sweet? Well, hold on to your bottle caps, folks, because tonight we're diving into the less than sparkling truth about Coca-Cola. We're peeling back the layers of this sugary empire to reveal some unsettling realities. Behind that bubbly facade lies a corporate giant with a lot to hide, a company that has mastered the art of marketing but has also been involved in some pretty shady practices. From mountains of plastic waste choking our planet to questionable labor practices that exploit workers in developing countries, Coca-Cola's dark secrets are numerous and troubling. Coca-Cola's dark secrets might make you think twice before your next sip. It's not just about the drink, it's about the impact that this global giant has on our world. We've all seen the commercials. They paint a picture of a perfect world where everyone is happy and everything is just peachy. Happy families, groups of friends, all brought together by the magic of an ice-cold Coke. It's heartwarming, isn't it? But that's just one side of the story. But what the commercials don't show you are the real costs of that bottle of happiness. The environmental damage, the health issues, and the social consequences that come with every sip. They don't show you the plastic pollution that clogs our oceans and harms marine life. They don't show you the health problems associated with excessive sugar consumption or the exploitation of workers in their supply chain. This isn't about some small-time operation, folks. This is a multi-billion-dollar corporation with a reach that extends to every corner of the globe. This is Coca-Cola we're talking about. They're everywhere. From the bustling streets of New York City to the remote villages in Africa, you can find Coca-Cola. They're a global behemoth, and with that kind of reach comes a responsibility that, frankly, they haven't been living up to. The power they wield is immense, and so are the consequences of their actions. So tonight we're putting Coca-Cola under the microscope. We're going to take a closer look at the practices and policies that have allowed them to thrive at the expense of our planet and our health. We're going to expose the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about what's lurking beneath the surface of this sugary empire. It's time to hold them accountable for their actions. Get ready, because things are about to get real. We're not just talking about a drink, we're talking about a global issue that affects us all. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and let's dive into the dark side of Coca-Cola. Let's start with the elephant in the room, or should I say, the plastic bottle in the ocean. Coca-Cola produces a staggering 120 billion single-use plastic bottles every year. That's billions with a B, folks. It's enough to circle the Earth over 1,300 times. Now, you might be thinking, but plastic is recyclable. What's the big deal? Well, here's the kicker. Only a tiny fraction of those bottles actually get recycled. The rest? They end up polluting our oceans, clogging landfills, and harming wildlife. Coca-Cola loves to talk about its commitment to sustainability. They launch these big splashy campaigns about using recycled plastic, but the truth is they're dragging their feet. Their promises are often empty, full of loopholes and vague timelines. Meanwhile, the plastic keeps piling up. Now let's move on to what's inside those iconic bottles. We often see Coca-Cola as a refreshing, fizzy drink that brings joy and happiness. But have you ever stopped to think about what you're actually consuming with each sip? We all know Coca-Cola is sweet, but the sweetness comes at a cost. The primary ingredient responsible for that sugary taste is high fructose corn syrup or sucrose, both of which are forms of sugar. But have you ever really thought about how much sugar is crammed into each serving? Prepare to be shocked. A single can of Coca-Cola contains a staggering amount of sugar that far exceeds the daily recommended intake for an average adult. A single can of Coke contains a whopping 39 grams of sugar. To put that into perspective, that's nearly 10 teaspoons of sugar in just one can. That's about 10 teaspoons of the sweet stuff. Imagine sitting down and eating 10 teaspoons of sugar in one go. It sounds absurd, but that's essentially what you're doing when you drink a can of Coke. Think about what that much sugar does to your body. When you consume that much sugar, it quickly enters your bloodstream, causing a spike in your blood sugar levels. This can lead to a quick burst of energy followed by a crash, leaving you feeling tired and craving more sugar. We're talking about increased risks of obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and a whole host of other health problems. Excessive sugar consumption is a major contributor to the obesity epidemic, and it can also lead to insulin resistance, which is a precursor to diabetes. And it's not just Coke, it's the entire family of sugary drinks they peddle. From Sprite to Fanta to Minute Maid, these beverages are loaded with sugar and they all pose similar health risks. But here's the truly insidious part. Coca-Cola knows the health risks. They've known for years. Despite this knowledge, they continue to push their products on the public, prioritizing profits over public health, yet they continue to market their sugary drinks aggressively, especially to young people and vulnerable communities. They use clever advertising and sponsorships to create a positive image, making it seem like their products are a harmless treat. They spend billions on advertising, often targeting low-income neighborhoods and developing countries where access to healthcare is limited. This makes it even harder for people in these communities to make informed choices about their health. It's a cycle of exploitation that needs to be broken. Section 4, Thirsty for Profits, Coca-Cola's water grab in India. Speaking of developing countries, let's talk about India. India, a land of diverse cultures, rich history and vibrant communities, has also been a battleground for corporate exploitation. One of the most glaring examples of this is the story of Coca-Cola in Kerala. Back in the year 2000, Coca-Cola opened a bottling plant in the Indian state of Kerala. This move was initially welcomed with open arms. The promise of jobs and economic prosperity was a beacon of hope for many in the region. They promised jobs and economic prosperity. The local community was optimistic, believing that this multinational giant would bring about positive change and uplift their standard of living. Instead, they delivered a full-blown water crisis. The reality turned out to be starkly different from the promises made. The region began to experience severe water shortages, and the once fertile land started to dry up. See, Coca-Cola uses a massive amount of water to produce its drinks. To put it into perspective, it takes about 3 liters of water to produce just 1 liter of Coca-Cola. This massive consumption of water had dire consequences for the local environment. In Kerala, they were sucking up so much groundwater that it depleted the local water table, leaving farmers and villagers without access to clean water. The wells that once provided life-sustaining water to the community ran dry. Crops withered, wells ran dry, and people were left desperate. The agricultural backbone of the region was broken, and the livelihoods of countless farmers were destroyed. This sparked massive protests across Kerala. The local community, feeling betrayed and desperate, took to the streets to voice their grievances. The protests were not just about water, they were about survival and justice. People were outraged, and rightfully so. The anger was palpable, and the sense of betrayal was deep. The community had trusted Coca-Cola, and in return they were left to suffer the consequences of corporate greed. This wasn't just about a refreshing drink anymore, it was about survival. The basic human right to access clean water was being denied, and the community was fighting for its very existence. The protests eventually forced Coca-Cola to shut down the plant, but the damage was done. The closure of the plant was a victory for the community, but the scars of the water crisis remained. This is just one example of how Coca-Cola prioritizes profits over people and the environment. The story of Kerala is a stark reminder of the devastating impact that corporate greed can have on vulnerable communities. And it's a story that's repeated in communities around the world. From Latin America to Africa, the pattern of exploitation and environmental degradation continues. It's a global issue that demands our attention and action. Section 5. Bitter reality, exploiting workers for global domination. Now let's talk about the people who make all this possible, the workers. Coca-Cola relies on a vast global supply chain employing hundreds of thousands of people. But behind the smiling faces in their corporate brochures lies a much darker reality. For years, Coca-Cola has been accused of exploiting workers, suppressing unions, and turning a blind eye to human rights abuses within its supply chain. In countries like Colombia and Guatemala, union leaders associated with Coca-Cola bottling plants have faced threats, violence, and even death. These aren't just isolated incidents, folks. They're part of a pattern of intimidation and exploitation that has plagued Coca-Cola for decades. While they rake in billions in profits, their workers are often subjected to dangerous working conditions, poverty wages, and a lack of basic rights.